Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. The People's Voice podcast is an investigative news podcast where I'm dedicated to covering stories and social issues that I feel are sometimes buried or not covered by social and mainstream media. The purpose of the podcast is to cover those topics, and then I try to offer some insightful analysis and possible actionable solutions to address those issues that I cover. The People's Voice podcast can be heard on all podcast platforms, and then we also put a video out on YouTube on a weekly basis as well for those who would like to watch the podcast. But in any event, say welcome and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today I want to get into the topic of environmental racism. Environmental racism. And specifically, I want to talk about environmental racism in regards to the number of data centers that are being built here in the United States. And this is one of those topics that I have to say has been getting coverage, not only locally or domestically, but internationally as well. But I want to specifically talk about the environmental racism portion of this as it affects multiple cities. One of the biggest stories that has been covered definitely during this last year for sure is the story that is currently occurring in a town called Boxton, which is down in Tennessee, which is just right outside of Memphis, or outside of Memphis, I should say. And this particular story has been getting a lot of national attention because the data center that was built there is owned by Elon Musk. And for his AI, the portion of his company, which is his AI company, I think it's called XAI, is the particular company that he built this data center for. And for those who don't know, Elon Musk is Tesla, the self-driving cars, the electric cars. That's who Elon Musk is, for those who may not know. But in any event, he has built this data center in Boxton. Why is this a story? Well, this is a story because this falls right under the category of environmental racism. Because in Boxton itself is a small town, like I said, in Tennessee. But the town itself is made up of more than, I believe it's like 90%. Hold up, I was just reading an article from Politico. Yeah, I was reading an article from Politico. And Politico, it says that today more than 90% of residents living in Boxtown zip code are Black with a median household income of $36,000, and that's according to the Census Bureau. So this is an issue that falls under environmental racism because this town is a perfect case example of other small towns that have communities that are majority either African American, people of color, or those living below the middle class poverty line that have been inundated with not only this data centers, but industrial facilities of all types in terms of gas and nuclear and just all type of industrial facilities. This has gotten more national attention than I guess previous stories should have, in my opinion. And I actually covered environmental racism, I think probably 2 years ago as well, when I talked about what's going on in Cancer Alley or Cancer Valley. For those who don't know, Cancer Valley is a stretch, like an 85-mile stretch in Louisiana, where there's oil refineries and all type of other industrial plants and generate plants and other refineries and things of that nature in this 85-mile stretch of Louisiana, where they call it Cancer Valley because the cancer rates are so high in these areas, and it's a direct effect from what's going on in terms of all of these industrial sites in that area. But like I said, this has gotten, a lot of attention, national and international attention, because it's Elon Musk. But not only that, it's the manner in which that this data center was built. Literally, this data center has probably been built in the last 18 to 20 months. And it's all to assist with his platform, his AI platform, which is called Grok. So if you're familiar with ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot and all these other AI platforms, he has built one as well. And this data center is going to be responsible for supporting that. This is affecting the residents down there now. And the reason that it's affecting the residents down there from a health perspective is because when they built this plant, this data center, I keep calling the plants, the data center, when they built this data center, because he had such an aggressive build schedule, they do not have the ability yet to run electricity to this facility, right? Because obviously that takes time to build that type of infrastructure. And for those who may not know, these data centers consume a ton of energy to run these, in terms of electricity, in terms of water power to keep them cool. I mean, it's a heavy load when it comes to resources. But instead of utilizing, electricity, or since he can't utilize electricity, but he was in such a rush to get this data center open, he basically has installed turbine generators on the site. And I want to make sure that I got the terminology correct. But so basically he has on his site, he has installed turbine generators, which basically use gas to generate into electricity to support the running of this facility. This is causing a great deal of health issues for the residents down there. Matter of fact, there was a town hall that was held down in the county where this facility is at, and many of the residents got up and talked about what the effects were as a result of this facility being built. Matter of fact, let me play this clip from More Perfect Union. They did a great job in covering this story. And in there, they interviewed one of the residents, or several residents, but I want you to hear what the residents had to say about what is occurring since this plant has been constructed. So this is for More Perfect Union, and they're talking to residents down there about the pollution that they've experienced as a result of this.
It was mixed in with everything.
You know how when you light your stove and that gas seeps with the little ticking noise? That's what it smelled like.
Alexis Humphreys grew up here, one street away from Easter.
When I smelled it the first time, I was asleep. And it woke me up because I thought gas was seeping in the house, but come to find out, we come outside and all the neighbors was outside trying to figure out what's going on.
He was an ordinary dad, full of joy, full of jokes.
Last year, Alexis lost her grandfather, who struggled with a respiratory illness called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD.
COPD is a breathing condition, but you don't get it unless you smoke cigarettes. And my granddad didn't smoke cigarettes, but every 3 weeks or so, my granddad was going to the hospital. He would have to get breathing treatments.
And that is just one of several cases that have been reported as a result of the building of this data center in this one particular town. And as I said, this is not something new. This is a reoccurring issue that occurs in multiple cities, especially in towns, especially those towns and cities that are populated by people of color or lower income people. And this is not the first time this has happened in Boxtown. Like I said before, this particular town has had a history of having industrial sites built in and around their town that has caused a great deal of health issues. Matter of fact, back in 2022, this was reported by Fox 13, which is a station down in Memphis, Tennessee, where they interviewed at that time residents of Boxtown, and they talked about a fuel refinery that was down there that was causing pollution and also increasing cancer rates. So let me play that as well, so you can hear how eerily similar this is to what's going on today with this new data center down in Boxtown. But this is from Fox 13 when they talked about this back in 2022.
The low-income community founded by former slaves is plagued by pollution. The Valero oil refinery, which over the years was part of a $4.25 million penalty over pollution. The TVA Allen fossil plant now shut down and replaced by a natural gas plant. And refined metals, now a federal Superfund site.
You have people that's dying. A lot of people are dying with cancer and other issues.
If you could explain the smell you experience when you step outside, what does it smell like?
Sometimes I wake up early in the morning, about 5 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I smell this awful scent in my home. I can't hardly breathe.
And as I said, eerily similar. And that was back from 2022, where they talked about this same town with this refinery. This town has like 17 other industrial sites, not just this data center, but other sites like refineries and other manufacturers that have been for decades dumping and affecting the air quality and the soil quality as well. Matter of fact, in that same report, they said that Boxtown had like a 4 times. Okay, it says the community has had cancer rates 4 times higher than the national average, and this is in this one town, and this has been going on for decades. And as you heard in that report, this town was founded by former slaves. But as I said from the top, this is not the only city that this is occurring in. There are cities across the country and towns across the country where these data centers are being put into. Matter of fact, I was just reading a story about South Carolina, where they just recently passed a bill to bring in data centers and other energy facilities, or I should say restart energy facilities that are also in areas that are predominantly populated by African Americans or people of color. Matter of fact, I was just seeing this story as well from Fox 5. Well, not Fox 5, but Live 5 down in South Carolina, where they talked about a energy bill that was recently passed to restart a nuclear plant that was out of commission, or I guess it was being half used. But it's in a county, I believe it's called either Cannabis or Cannabis County, or Cannabis, South Carolina, where again you have a majority of African American, people of color, and people of lower incomes. Let me play this, and then I'll talk a little bit more about why this is occurring, and then I'll close out from there. But this is from Live 5.
gas plant at this former coal ash plant in Kennedy's in Colleton County.
The utilities haven't shared which kind of cooling system they would use, and so that would determine how much water they would withdraw and discharge back into the Edisto River. And then with the pipeline, they also haven't shared their proposed route, and so if they use eminent domain.
That leaves people in the area skeptical.
And they could just come in here, give us a couple of dollars and take our land and put pipelines under it. Then we also have well water. This stuff goes into the wells. It is very disheartening, and I'm really concerned.
And again, that's down in South Carolina, but you have these type of energy projects and bills going on in states across the country, in Texas and California, and oftentimes these plants and these data centers and these energy facilities are placed in these neighborhoods, which is why this is a direct example of environmental racism. And this is not a new topic. Again, a lot has been talked about, over the last year about this, but this has been talked about for decades. Matter of fact, Robert Bullard, who's considered the father of environmental racism, has written several books on this. If you're interested, one of those books is Dumping in Dixie, where he talks about this very issue, and it talks about how these industries specifically target African American communities and lower income communities to plant these industries, these polluting industries in these areas. And it's literally another form of Jim Crow and racism. But environmental racism is a topic that is not new. It is something that is ongoing. And the reason why this is occurring is for one reason, right? Because they look at the economic benefits of how much money they can make, and then they totally disregard, the people that it will affect in terms of, the residents themselves. So, and why does this occur? I was reading that article from Politico where they talked about the lobbying from the energy industry that they did back in 2024, when everyone was confused about why is Elon Musk, all of a sudden dumping all this money into Trump's campaign. These are the reasons why they do these things. And obviously the cities themselves and the states themselves, they only care about, increasing the property value and the tax revenue that's going to come from it. Now, they always talk about where it's going to be a job creator as well, but oftentimes in many studies, those who live in the town many times don't get these job opportunities. And in effect, a lot of them end up as well with the highest risk or the highest cases in terms of medical issues as a result of these industries being placed in these communities. So I just wanted to hit this today. It's a ton of information. I literally could sit here for the next 45 minutes and just go through case by case. But I wanted to just, like I said, push this agenda forward. There's a lot of news coming up or forms coming up here in the next month or so to sign petitions and to voice your opinion, especially for those of you down in Tennessee and South Carolina. And I know out in San Francisco, you guys have a plant coming over there as well. So, definitely get involved as much as possible. Now, I'll be totally honest with you. Most of the time, by the time it gets to this stage, discounting what's going on in Memphis, because that's a goal that's not going to turn around. But before it gets to the boots on the ground stage where these companies get on the ground, you have to get involved and voice your opinion. You have to get to your local and your state people to make sure that this does not occur again in your community. And when it does occur, these companies need to be held responsible in terms of making sure that they're properly permitted. They need to be fined and then, eventually closed if they are not following the requirements in terms of Clean Air Acts and things of that nature. But I don't want to bore you guys with that. But that's my time for today. As always, if you want to leave a comment, you can reach us at the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram. And then you could also leave a comment at I Am Trey Evans on YouTube when we post the video over there as well. But that's my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.